I got to see Buckethead live one time solo at a solo Buckethead show, and it was one of the few times I've crossed the U.S. border to see a musician. So that's, you have to be really good, and it's got to be, for me, it's got to be a bucket list item for me to cross the border, right?
Right.
And that was awesome. It was my dad and I, because I asked a few friends, "Do you want to see Buckethead?" And they're like, "Really? Like, who's he playing with?" I'm like, "Nobody. It's just him." "Nah, I'll pass." I'm like, "You'll pass?" Like, I've been watching for a Buckethead tour for like 15 years. This is the first time I've had a chance, and I gotta go. So I asked my dad, and my dad's really good for that. Like, if he wants to go, he's in. If I can't find anybody to go, he'll go with me. But he wanted to go. Like, he likes Buckethead a lot. So it was a little club. I want to say it was called the Buffalo Iron Works, and it was a very small club, like maybe 100, 200 people max capacity. But if you paid an extra like $10 for your ticket, you got VIP seating. So instead of $20, it was $30. And the VIP sitting, it was up on top of the bar. They had a roof over the bar, so you get to sit like 15, 20 feet in the air.
Right.
So you're looking down. You're looking down on the stage, and there's nobody in your way. And you're sitting on a bar stool, so you have to stand for 3 hours or anything like that. And it was kind of it was underwhelming a bit because he didn't play with a band. There was no drummer on stage. It was just him playing guitar to pre-recorded like bass and drum tracks, But he played all the songs my dad wanted to hear, and he did all his dancing around the nunchuck moves, and
yeah.
And I was so glad to see it. Like it's there's no tricks with him. Like when you hear his guitar playing and you think it's being processed, and there's no way a human's doing that. He's doing it. He's always doing it.
Yeah, I know. I've seen some YouTube videos of that kind of performance that he does, and he's quite a skinny guy, isn't he? He's quite thin.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it kind of all of his movements and things are kind of accentuated with the ridiculous bucket on the head. So here's a question. I've always wondered about this about him. When you saw him when you first see him, the only thing that you can think about is that he's got that weird mask and the bucket on his head. What is that all about? And then when you see him live, does that just sort of go away afterward? Does that, you're not looking at that anymore, you're just looking at everything else? Or do you always come back to that and asking yourself the same question all the time?
You know what? I think by the time I saw him, that thing had gone away from me.
Right.
Because I was so obsessed with Buckethead. I've come to the conclusion a while ago that Buckethead, he's very introverted, and I think he may be on the spectrum as well. I'm sure he's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So I think for him it's not a shtick. It's literally self-defense. He doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't want to look you in the eye. He doesn't want to make eye contact with anybody in the audience. He doesn't want to smile at anybody. He doesn't want anybody to be disappointed by his facial expressions, and he hides.
Yeah.
So I kind of accepted that as a while ago as just sort of like, that's just who he is, and I didn't think about it as much. I was fascinated by how childish he seems. He seems obsessed with Michael Jackson to a certain degree. And I think it's the childlike behavior of Michael Jackson that he latches onto. Like throughout the show, the way he interacts with the audience, he gives toys to the people. He gives away stuffed animals and rubber chickens and stuff. And he has a whole a Santa sack full of toys he gives away by the end of the show. And he'll wear a puppet.
That is marvelous.
Yeah, and he'll wear a puppet on his hand for a song while he's playing with the other hand, and then he throws it out. And if you type in say Buckethead interview with Kurt Loder, he did an interview with Kurt Loder back about 20 years ago, and he has a puppet on his hand called Herbie the Hand Puppet, and he talks kind of like he's having a hard time getting all the words out, And then, so I listened to the interview with him on a podcast. I forget the name of the podcast, but if you look it up, you can find it. He talks like that in the interview too. And I realized that he wasn't putting on a voice. That's how he talks to people. He doesn't know he can't talk like you and I are talking to each other. He mumbles and whispers a lot. And apparently the musicians that know him, like John Zorn and Bill Laswell, he's in the studio. He wears the mask in the studio. He wears the mask to dinner. It's not a performance thing for him. If you get the mask off Buckethead to have a conversation with him, he trusts you like he trusts his brother or his father. He doesn't. It's a privilege to see under the mask more than you might think. And I saw an interview one time. It might have been a Praxis interview back when Surge was in the band. Surge did an album with him from System of a Down, and the interviewer would ask Buckethead a question. And then Serge would like put his ear up to Buckethead's like mask and would get whispered into his ear. Then he'd answer the question for him, you know? And I think the interviewer was getting annoyed. Like, come on, man, just talk to me. But he didn't realize that it's a need for him. Like he really can't handle it. Like, you know, and I saw another interview one time where he's at one of his own shows and some college kid sneaks backstage and he wants to give an interview to Buckethead. And every time he asks Buckethead a question, he starts flailing his arms around and like making noises. Like he refused to answer any question and acted more and more absurd till the kid left the room.
Yeah.
You know, and again, when I was younger, I thought that was a shtick, but as life has gone on and I continue to see this, Buckethead, I think is he has like a learning disability or a social dysfunction, and for whatever the grace of God or whatever you want to call it, music is paid for him. And I think if it wasn't for his guitar paying his way, I think he'd be in an institution somewhere, or he'd be homeless, or he'd be like, I don't think he'd be well.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately he isn't well. He's been suffering with heart problems for a while, and he's got bad back problems, and apparently he almost died a few years ago, and that's part of the podcast.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah. So it's he's, you know, but you never know much about it because he talked about it in this podcast. And I'd love to look. I think it's called like Coming to Life or something. And I listened to most of it, but I found it really hard to listen to his voice. I couldn't make it all the way through. And it's the Coming Alive podcast, a conversation with Buckethead. It was 2017. And it's like,
wow.
It's historic. Like it's literally the only proper interview you'll likely ever hear from Buckethead. And it's worth a listen if you can tolerate his voice.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you make all kinds of assumptions about people's motivations for doing something when you don't really understand. And my assumption was that it is a shtick, that it's like there might be something there that means that he's a bit uncomfortable in public, and that's just a way of doing it, and then it becomes a trademark, and you know, but really under the mask he's kind of all embarrassed about the fact that he uses the mask. But it's exactly the opposite. The mask is the only way he can do it. The chicken bucket on his head is just I guess that's like I don't know, that's a signature thing, I suppose. I don't know.
It is.
But
and I have a DVD.
It's interesting.
I have a DVD called Secret Recipe, and it's all about like the origins of Buckethead and everything. And like there's videos of him as a teenager in his room with his buddy Maximum Bob, who was one of his first musical like partners. And like they're like teenagers, and he's in his bedroom at home, just shredding on guitar. He doesn't have the bucket on, I don't think, but he's got the mask. He's always had the Michael Myers mask or whatever it is.
Wow.
Yeah, and his friend is just telling these fantastic stories about the origin of Buckethead. Like apparently the story goes, which I don't believe it's true, obviously, it can't be, but the story goes that Maximum Bob was walking home from school one day and they found a baby laying in the gutter, and they brought him home, and they're like, "Mom, can we keep him?" And she's like, "I guess," like, you know. And he didn't like being in the house, so they kept him in the chicken coop, right? They used to live in the chicken coop with the chickens, and you know. But I think part of it is true though. Like not the fact that he was a baby in a bucket, but he had a strange fascination with chickens, like so much so that when he was.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I hate chickens. One of the few irrational things I have is a deep hatred of chickens.
That's funny. So apparently the story is that he lives in a chicken coop most of the time. Or maybe they were hiding him there so the parents wouldn't find out. But they lived over a hill from a movie theater, like a drive-in movie theater. So he would, from the chicken coop, would watch drive-in movies without sound, and he'd play his guitar along. And he'd make his own soundtrack to the movies he didn't know the words of or what was going on. And that's why he's fascinated with horror movies, and he's fascinated with making movie music, because a lot of his songs are meant to be tributes to movies, like obscure Japanese underground horror movies and whatnot. And so I have a feeling where he grew up, his parents probably did have a house that overlooked a movie theater, and I think he did spend time outside with the chickens. They probably had a chicken coop in the backyard for eggs or something. And I think he spent time with the chickens watching it, because apparently the bucket is supposed to represent his distaste for Kentucky Fried Chicken, because they mistreat chickens so poorly. Like they're known for abusing chickens before they kill them and eat them. You know, like they often, I don't know if KFC exists in Europe, but Kentucky Fried Chicken, does it? Okay. So if you buy a bucket of chickens from KFC, you often find they have broken bones. Like half the pieces are broken. And it's not because they got broken while cooking. They were broken when the chicken was alive. You know, and my grandmother, my grandmother's Mennonite, and she used to have a chicken farm in Manitoba. And if you fed her KFC, she would usually cry. She'd actually be moved to tears because she couldn't believe the abuse done to these chickens. And she'd pull the skin off and she'd show you bruises. She'd be like, that's a bruise. That's not from cooking. That's not, that chicken was hurt, that his bone broken and was hit right here before it was killed and eaten. You know, so apparently for him, like the upside down bucket's like an upside down flag, and he wears it as like an awareness. Like, don't eat this shit. This shit's terrible. Like you're harming my brothers, my chicken brothers.
See, if I was doing that, I'd be the opposite. I would be the opposite. I would beat the shit out of the chickens. Because the little bastards, those chickens, I hate fucking chickens. It's the only thing. Chickens and wasps.
Wasps?
I don't like wasps and I don't like chickens. The wasps one is perfectly rational, because once you've been stung by a wasp, any compassion for life it doesn't apply to wasps. They're fair game. Chickens, it's completely irrational. I think it comes from a childhood experience with chickens.
Okay.
I can remember the feel of chickens, and it just makes me. It gives me. I don't like the look of chickens. I don't like to see them. I will eat them though.
Well, they're delicious.
So yeah, I mean, all joking apart, I mean, I don't like to take any life or treat any life with any disrespect. So I'm quite with Buckethead on that one, but I still hate chickens.